If you had a limited budget, I still think there's value in creating really good authoritative content. The search everywhere mentality, people think that, granted, this is changing. We've implemented EOS as part of our business model in helping us kind of guide the business. And it's been really kind of a game changer for us because it allowed us to really identify what our core values are, what's the company direction, and all those things really start to hone in on what your culture is. And really our turnover rate dramatically decreased, and we were able to really keep some really good people on for the long term.
Welcome to another episode of E-Coffee with Experts. I'm your host, Austin Willman. Our guest today serves as a partner and digital marketing director of 42 Connect, a full-service agency out of Cleveland, Ohio, that was founded in 2003. He leads strategy across PPC, display ads, and SEO, and he's a regular contributor to Agency Analytics blog, which rounds him out as a creative with a background in web design and development. And with over 2 decades of experience in digital marketing and entrepreneurship, I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Brian Ferritto. Brian, welcome on.
Thanks, Austin. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And it's always good to see someone from Ohio, the Midwestern energy is just so nice and relaxing and welcoming. So it's always good to connect because I'm out here in Phoenix and people are not as nice out here.
Absolutely. No, I can understand that. And that's, it's always good to connect with someone, like you said, from Ohio and Midwest all the way.
And being in Cleveland, from what I understand, is you started relatively small, as everyone does, and then you've grown, and we'll get into the stages of business growth, the acquisition, the expansion. But I want to take it back, before you became an agency partner at 42 Connect, like how did you first get into marketing in general?
Yeah, great question. I went to school for art and design. So I definitely had that design background. I knew I always wanted to do something in art and design. And when I got to college, I really got into kind of graphic design at the time. And then from there, I had this thought that I always wanted to own my own business. I just had that kind of passion for something like that. Actually, quick story, when I was in college, I designed a poster that I thought was really cool. And I was like, man, I think some companies out there would benefit from this. I think this is really cool. I ended up sending the poster to a number of different big shoe companies. Nike and Asics Corporation was one of them. Asics was big into the running and wrestling, which at the time I was a college wrestler. So I was really familiar with the brand. And I had designed this poster. I sent it off to someone. I like a physical copy. I rolled it up, put it in a tube, sent it out. And it was actually early into even just email. It landed on someone's desk at Asics. And one day I got a random phone call that said, hey, this poster showed up on my desk and I'd like to turn it into a t-shirt. And I was like, oh, this is cool.
Nice.
I was 20 years old and they threw me a free pair of shoes and like a windbreaker. And I thought it was like, this is great. I made it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying you were shooting your shot from an early age.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that was it. I think I was just had that ambition and was just like really wanted to I was passionate about design but I was also passionate about, building a business and really without having any clue on what that really means, to be honest.
Yeah.
As I kind of learned along the way. But yeah, that's how it kind of got going. I got out of college, got a job here in town in Cleveland with a sports marketing company, IMG, and I started there as a designer, moved from that to another company here locally, an agency. And I switched over to web and I got into web design and really dove into that. And then from there, kind of broke off and started my own agency with a partner of mine. And that's kind of the quick origin story of it. But yeah.
Right. I almost said the villain origin story, but it's not a villain origin. It's the hero origin story, right?
There you go.
You mentioned that you were a wrestler, and from a lot of the successful entrepreneurs that I've seen, or the successful salespeople, which is essentially what entrepreneurship is, it's a lot of sales. Do you bring that sort of wrestling culture into the business, or how do you instill a culture of competition in the business? More broadly, what is the culture at 42 Connect?
Yeah, good questions. I think kind of touch on your first point about how do I bring my sports background and even the wrestling mentality or wrestling experience into business? And it's really about, I think, more than anything, overcoming adversity and understanding that, like, man, you're going to fail along the way. And if you look at it as failure, then you're kind of looking at it all wrong, and understanding that just like in sports or in my specific case, wrestling, it was like each loss was a learning opportunity. Okay, let's reassess. Let's look at what we did. How did we train before? How was our diet? How did we compete? What was our nervous level like? All these
Mm,
things that you kind of measure. And it's the same thing in business. Like, there has been repeated failures, and it's a time to just look back and evaluate and learn from it, and then move forward. So if you're not
mm,
constantly doing that, I think you're going to really struggle. And it's one of the core values that we have here at 42 Connect is overcoming that adversity with a positive attitude and just learning, like this constant idea of learning and growing. So that's kind of, taking my background and really quickly and how I've instilled it into the business, and
mm.
got the business to this point. The
Yeah.
culture here is, we've implemented EOS as part of our business model, and helping us kind of guide the business. And it's been really kind of a game changer for us because it allowed us to really identify what our core values are, what's the company direction, and all those things really start to hone in on what your culture is.
Mm.
And so it is this mentality of overcoming adversity, constantly trying to learn and grow and be adaptive and be a team and provide exceptional experiences for our customers or our
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we're trying to instill here.
I love that. And I heard someone say, turn your periods into commas, whereas, take
There
rests,
you go. Yeah.
don't quit. I would love to talk more about culture. And I think we could have a whole podcast on culture and team management and leadership on our own. I actually wanted to ask you about EOS. A lot of the times when I speak with agency owners who are running on EOS or they read Traction or something, typically there was a catalyst or like a trigger for jumping into a different operating system. Maybe things were decreasing rapidly, or maybe a big event happened that kind of like shook them, that made them think like, oh, I have to do something differently. I'm curious what the catalyst was for you.
Yeah. There definitely was. And there was two things. I think this need to want to grow the team, to grow the company from a revenue standpoint. That, I think, from a business standpoint, that was a hurdle. It was like, okay, how do we get to the next level? But I think the one thing that I always kind of look back at and point to was we were having tremendous turnover,
Mm,
and it was a really big moment of kind of self-reflection and trying to figure out, like, okay, why is this happening? And you point to all these factors. And I think as leaders, and I think good leadership does, you point the finger at yourself and you say, we're not doing something right. Like, we're
mm,
not providing either the right training, or we're not providing whatever it is, leadership in a certain direction. And I think EOS, kind of opened our eyes to that
mm,
and made us realize, like, yeah, you're right. Like, we are kind of failing our team, and for reasons that were even unknown to me, right? Like, not having good transparency, not having clear direction, and sharing that on a quarterly basis with the team, and letting them know, like, I always talked about, like, hey, we're in this together, and we're all, in for the common good of 42 Connect, and let's push forward together. But they didn't know where forward was. They didn't know why. And the where are we going and the why are we doing this became really important. And I just never realized it, right? Like, I had some of these thoughts in my head, but we weren't really sharing them openly with the team on a consistent basis. So therefore, no one really knew the direction. If you don't give people a why, it makes it tough. And we had a lot of people leaving, and not in, really trying to get feedback from them. Why are you leaving? Like, what's going on? What did we do wrong? Why aren't you happy? And it wasn't as much people weren't happy. They were just moving on, right? Like, it was a stepping stone in their career. But once we implemented EOS, and I think gave really clear direction on where we are going and why we were going there and how we were going to get there, I think people really started to buy in. And it also helped us when we hired people. Are we hiring the right people for the right reasons? And what do they want? What are their core values? Do we already share the same core values? So there's already consistency here. So like all those things, I'm touching on a lot of points of EOS, but all those things within EOS really kind of solve that problem for us, and really our turnover rate dramatically decreased, and we were able to really keep some really good people on for the long term.
And I'm so glad to hear that. It's one of the things. I'm going to shift into the acquisition of a business that you acquired several years back. When buyers typically look at a business to acquire, they look at obviously a whole variety of things. The due diligence can take quite a while, and retention of employees and retention of clients, I would imagine, one of the most important things to look at. They want a business that can run on its own for the most part. I'm curious if you could take us back to when you acquired Bov, the agency. Are they out of West Coast, right?
Denver.
Southwest?
Denver. Yep.
Denver.
Denver.
Okay. When you acquired Bov, what was it that you were looking for, or what was the purpose of you acquiring the agency?
Yeah. So the purpose was we wanted to grow our business, and we kind of came upon this idea that we can grow our business and do it at a little bit faster rate than just slow and organic.
Mm-hmm.
If we acquire an agency, if we acquire someone else. This was never a thought of mine ever. And then we were actually approached by a company a number of years back, and we went through a due diligence process about being acquired. And I was just more open to the idea. It really wasn't that I wanted to sell or get out of the business.
Mm-hmm.
I was just really intrigued. I learned a ton. That was almost like an eight month process to get to that point where we ended up kind of parting ways and just say, yeah, this is not really what we want to do. But that moment, it stuck in my head as, hey, this is an opportunity. Maybe we can flip the script here and go and acquire a company.
Yeah.
So that was the genesis of it. And we wanted to kind of grow. We wanted to do it. And I'm not saying, we wanted to grow overnight, but I mean, essentially that's what happens when you acquire an agency.
Mm-hmm.
But we had growth goals, and we wanted to go in that direction. So we were really looking for a company very similar to ours. We weren't trying to break into a new service offering or do something that, we weren't comfortable with already. And I didn't have the confidence of, having to rely on a brand new team for a service that I didn't know anything about. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just saying, hey, let's go find an agency that's very similar to us, that they're doing the same service offerings. We're just going to acquire that agency. And in turn, we're going to, gain some new resources, some human resources, some people that happen to be really good at what they do. And we're going to acquire a new client list, right? We're going to acquire a bunch of new clients. And it was really exciting because I had this idea like, well, what is Bov doing well? What's 42 Connect doing well? How can we bring these two things together? What can we learn from each other? How can we improve? And all that stuff was really, really exciting and important. And there were many challenges that I'm sure we can get into. But to stay on track with your original question, one of the things we were looking for were similar service offerings. The other thing that really struck us with Bov was that they were already running on EOS. Their core values that they listed were very similar to ours. Like, they were just very parallel paths. And I knew the fact that they were running on EOS and we were too, that the transition and the culture and bringing everyone together and not having to teach new people about the system of EOS and everything that's involved, they were already doing it. So I think that was really important to us. I didn't set out looking for a company that was running on EOS, but the fact that they had this nice service offering, they had a good client list, and they were also running on EOS was like a bonus.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is, sometimes we'll look for a business that maybe is underperforming, but you can see big potential, whether it's the market, whether it's a service offering or like top talent, and you want to just acquire that human resource. But then separately, you're like, okay, these guys are like you said, they're running the same operating system, and we just want to expand into maybe a different geographical location, or we want to double our client list. There's many opportunities when we're talking about acquiring businesses. I guess I wanted to ask more along the lines of the service offerings, right? So right now you are a full service agency, and that coincides with what Bov was offering. What do you like? What is a majority of the agency focused on today?
Yeah, we're primarily focused on what I'll say digital marketing. and essentially that being two main services, SEO and what I'll just generally call PPC or paid advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Those are our main core service offerings that we're really trying to work with companies on and in essence sell as a service.
Mm-hmm.
The other one being website design and development, which to me kind of falls under the digital marketing toolbox, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I tell a lot of people I talk to, like, it's the foundation of any kind of digital marketing strategy. If you don't have a good sound website, you can spend all the money in the world and drive all the quality traffic, and it's usually going to fail at that point. So let's
Mm-hmm.
start and make sure that you have a really good website. And that's where traditionally, for 10, 12 years before we kind of made this shift into digital marketing, that's what we did. We were a website design and development company. And then we made a shift toward digital marketing and really having that be our core focus with web design and development, kind of that tool in our toolbox.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
and
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you're looking at valuation of a company, you have a company that has a product base, one-off, like project base rather, services, and then you
Yeah,
have the recurring client base. When it comes to the valuation of a business, which one scores much higher? You get many X more for a recurring business. That's for sure. I'm curious.
absolutely.
I'm curious. You mentioned, paid advertising and SEO, and at DWS, Digital Web Solutions, we work with a lot of different agencies, and majority of them are focused on SEO. I'm curious, from your perspective, are there any, like, when you're talking with clients, talking with brands, are there any vanity metrics that the brands are asking about that you just kind of laugh and shake your head when they bring those up?
On the paid side or the SEO or
I
both?
would say on the SEO, just because things are changing so much with AI, right? LLMs, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say no. I think if there's one, I think we typically get the hey, I want to rank number one for X keyword. Like
Mm-hmm.
you just repeatedly hear that over and over most of the time because I don't think most clients don't know anything beyond that. And like you said, with AI and the shift in the quick shift in how people are starting to interact with the web and the content and understanding that. But even just going back to just like Google SEO, I always kind of feel like it's not about ranking number one for one single keyword. It's about having great coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Can we rank 50 keywords in the top 10 or between 10 and 3, let's say? That's probably going to make you more money in the end than ranking number one for one keyword.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I wouldn't say the ranking number is a vanity metric. It's still a metric that we track. I think it is important, obviously. But I'm constantly trying to stress with our clients that it's more about quality traffic and quality leads than it is where you're ranking.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Going after that long tail keyword research is the gold mine,
Huge.
right?
Yeah.
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 Okay, so on that, if a client comes to you and they have limited budget, it's the end of 2025. New there's this new verbiage, I guess, of search everywhere optimization that's replacing traditional SEO. And someone says, I want to get my presence much larger online. Here's my budget. And it's limited. It's not quite enough to make a dent with PPC. Where do you advise them, or what's the strategy of someone who wants to be scrappy when it comes to search everywhere optimization?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think on a limited budget, it makes it difficult. I think
It's
if
tough.
you had a limited budget, I still think, there's value in creating really good authoritative content. I think this search everywhere mentality, people think that, granted, this is changing minute by minute. So by the time this podcast comes out, this could already be different.
Right.
I think the foundational elements of great SEO, they transcend into what's
Mm.
going on with AI and ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever tool you're using, right? So
Hmm.
understanding, I think, really, really great SEO is probably having that base foundation. I don't think there's a silver bullet. I don't think there's this quick fix.
Yeah.
And so if someone just said, hey, I only have a limited budget, what can you do to make it just shiny
Yeah.
object kind of syndrome? And it's like, a lot of times I might talk to that client and just say, hey, here's my suggestion, and maybe this isn't a great fit. I think you really need to invest though, and
Mm,
be willing to invest in really good foundational, what I'll call traditional SEO.
hmm
And it's starting, that term I think is going to change, SEO. But I think the foundations of creating great content, becoming an
mm,
authority, creating a content ecosystem, like all these things are what Google's been telling us for a long time, and
hmm
the LLMs are picking up on the same things.
hmm Yeah, I love that. There is no silver bullet. It's a long-term
No.
strategy, and you can't win in 30 days and then just drop the strategy. Doesn't work like that. I'm curious, at 42 Connect, your client base, is it mostly like small businesses, founder-led, mid-market, enterprise? I'm sure there's a mix here and there, but like where do the majority of your clients land?
Yeah, good question. I think it's 100% a mix. I think the majority of them are more on the small business, the SMB. I think there's
Mhm.
some mid-market companies that we actually have some really good success with, but a lot of them, we're dealing with either owners or presidents of the companies, and they're on the smaller end of the spectrum in terms of, a company that has a dedicated marketing budget, right? Like I think there's this qualification on who are we trying to reach, and what does that mean from a revenue standpoint or number of people working at a certain company as we kind of hone in on our sales efforts.
Mhm.
Obviously, I think, a 2-3 person operation really isn't a great fit, because oftentimes those companies aren't at a revenue point where they're having dedicated marketing dollars. I think
Mm.
you have to hit that spot of a small business who's big enough to understand, like, marketing is really important. We need to be found not only on Google but other areas, and we have a paid budget, and we're willing to invest in this, and we understand the importance of it.
Mhm. And there's a follow-up question to that. There was a reason that I asked about that is because with founder-led brands, you know, a lot of the times the authority, the expertise, the experience, it doesn't come from a company, it comes from a person. And we see that with the shift to UGC, now we have these big brands that are focused on, hiring people with an iPhone because with everything becoming manufactured in the content realm, we want things that are more real. How do you, or if you do, how do you approach founders, or let me rephrase, do you approach founders and encourage them to be the face of the brand and create personal branding content? Or are you mostly just encouraging them to refine the brand's message and post on branded accounts, I suppose?
Yeah, we really don't advise on that. That's not really something that we're advising on from a
Mm,
like a personal brand standpoint, or posting on the company's, behalf as the brand itself. Most founders that we're dealing with are in a position to want to promote themselves as a sell as the brand personally,
hmm
right? Most of them aren't posting anything at all. I think a lot of times it's the challenge of us helping them create content, whether it's going to be on the website or it's going to be posted on some social platform, and in just getting enough time and enough expertise from them to help them develop the content, right? And so
hmm
I think most of the clients, if not all of the clients that we're dealing with, aren't really in a position to promote themselves as a personal brand or the face of the company. And so that's not really a strategy we pursue.
Cool. Yeah. And I appreciate you going there. Flipping back to the foundations of SEO, right? We have on page versus off page, technical SEO, building out schema, H1s, like the formatting. We also have link building, digital PR. All of them are important these days. I guess, is there anyone where you feel that maybe you've gotten outsized results from focusing or shifting on one or the other?
Yeah, I think recently, and I say recently over the last year or more now, link building's been really successful for us.
Mm,
And we've seen and we've done some tests, but understanding that creating quality links, inbound links, and internal linking, both, we've seen some really good results. And so I'm curious to see how that starts to change
hmm
here now. And I think that's, again, as always, I think having an open mind, understanding what worked a year ago is not necessarily going to work today. being understanding what's going on in the landscape and being able to adjust is definitely the most important thing here. But yeah, for us, it's really been a shift in doing some really quality link building that's really moved the needle for a number of our clients.
And that's really cool to hear because I feel like there's kind of it's a mixed bag when we talk about link building. It's like, yes, it's important, but it's not like the main thing, but it's really cool to hear that component has worked well because it's not, it's not something that's sexy, right? It's not like, hey, we just created these like this awesome content. But in reality, like LLMs, they're not just looking for content, they're looking for context and they're looking for like
Yeah.
relationships, right? And links
Yeah.
it's kind of the backbone for all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah, for sure. And I think, like you said, it's not sexy, and it's this idea too. And I think it's a hard concept for clients to even understand. It's like you're
Yeah.
doing what, and like there's nothing really to show for it, right? Until you see results. And to
Mm,
take a step back too, I don't think link building works if you don't have. And I keep this sounds like a broken record at this point, but like really good foundational work. If you don't
mm,
have a really good page of content, let's say a service page that's really built out, and you, like you said, touches on all the things from a technical standpoint, scannability and schema and well written content and in-depth content and internal links to other resources internally. Like if
hmm
you don't have that foundation, I'm not sure link building really works well, right? For us,
mm,
we always start with a great foundation, and then the link building is always this phase two type of approach for us. And
mm.
when we get to that point, and like I said, recently we've had some really good success with our link building, but I don't think it starts with having a great foundation. If that's not there, I'm not sure link building is really the answer for you.
Yeah, I love that. The answer in marketing is always it depends, right? Depends on so many
Exactly.
factors. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um
Yeah. Yeah.
as we wrap up our time together here, Brian, one, where can people find you if they want to learn more about 42 or Brian?
Yeah, a great question. They can go to 42connect.com, the number four, the number two, connect.com. You can hit me up on LinkedIn as well, Brian Ferrito on LinkedIn. I'm happy to engage there and have any conversations, or check out our website.
And that's with two R's and two T's.
You got it.
Last question that I'll ask you is what do you see for 42 Connect on the horizon in the next 2, 3, 5 years? Anything we should look out for as far as like business growth or any acquisitions in the pipeline or anything like that?
Yeah, you're kind of diving into our 1, 3, and 10-year vision. But looking 3 years out, we are looking to continue to grow. I think an acquisition is always a potential for us, and so I'm constantly vetting other companies and other agencies that are out there. I have a good network where I get a number of emails each week and each month, and I'm constantly looking. I'm not saying that that's exactly the route we're going to go, but I'm very
Sure.
open to that. And we're going to continue to just kind of push forward with what we're really good at, and kind of try to continue to grow. And I think we're going to be really focusing internally on our own SEO and strategy and in our coverage in the LLMs in the future here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's really unknown, and we'll see where things go.
What a time to be alive. What a
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
that's for sure.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Brian. We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.